Welcome to the cooking section of Juan's World when I do Christmas cooking, and we're now in the third week of Advent. And my big plan was to make Torrone today, a kind of nougat that's very popular at Christmas in Italy and also in Buenos Aires. Can't get it in Cambodia, so I thought, I'll make it. I looked up some recipes. I checked out some YouTube videos and it all seemed really straightforward. You need some nuts, you need a mix of honey and sugar, you need some whipped egg whites, and you cook them at various stages, and when it's all done everything gets blended together and hocus pocus, abracadabra, you've got Torrone. Well, that's not what happened. So let's get into what I ended up doing on 2 separate days. And I did end up with something, but it wasn't Torrone. And then after that, I will show you how to make some Christmas ice cream that's very popular in Australia. Before you start any cooking, you have to prepare a pan. And here I have an 8x11 baking pan, and I've also got some rice paper, edible rice paper, and some plastic wrap. And what you're supposed to do is line the pan with the plastic wrap with enough lapping over the ends so that when the pan is full you can turn the plastic back around over the Torrone. So when the plastic is in the pan, you then place in the bottom a sheet of rice paper so that you can pour the cooked Torrone over the rice paper and it will not stick to the plastic. That's the theory. We never really got that far. But that's the first preparation. Next preparation is to toast some nuts. Well, I actually had some toasted nuts already, about 1 cup, but I had about 3 cups of nuts that I hadn't toasted. You need 4 cups of nuts altogether, and the normal combination is 3 cups of almonds and 1 cup of pistachios. But I had a mix of almonds, cashews, and pistachios. So here we are starting with toasting the nuts, and I'm starting with the pistachios. I've got them on medium-low heat, and main thing to do is to keep a close eye on them. It only takes about 3 or 4 minutes to toast them, and only takes about another 20 seconds to burn them. So you have to be really, really watchful. And I'm toasting each separate kind of nut separately because they take different amounts of time, obviously. Some of them are smaller than others. The pistachios are very small. I'm going to do some almonds next, and then some cashews, and I want to just pay close attention. The pistachios are probably the hardest of all because you can't really see when they're changing color at all because they're green to start with, but more than anything else I'm just trying to bring out a little bit more flavor. You could do it in the oven too. There are a couple of things to pay attention to. One of them is that I could use a little bit of butter in here, And if I were toasting them for other reasons, I would do that, but I don't want to get any oil or any fat into my Torrone mix, and so I'm just dry toasting them. Could do it in an oven too, but then I can't pay attention, and it's really dangerous in the oven because they can turn immediately. You have to just keep your eye solidly on them, and this is just easier because I can see what's going on. I can smell. These are almost done. And I'm not going to show you the other two, but once I'm done, I'm not actually going to make the Torrone immediately, but when I start making the Torrone, I'm going to put these in a very moderate to cool oven just to keep warm, because that's an intrinsic part of the process. When you add the nuts to the Torrone, they need to be warm, otherwise if they hit the warm Torrone mix that you're trying to cook, they'll cool it down. So that's a very important step. Okay, now on to the making of the Torrone. And bear in mind, I've never done this before. I have no idea what I'm doing, and it could be a complete disaster, but let's check it out. Now, I'm really not sure what I'm doing at this point, but I have 1 1/3 cup of honey and a cup of sugar, and I'm going to use a spatula to mix them together. And the recipe says 30 minutes. Now the problem I have is that I'm not sure about the temperature of the induction plate. I know what low is on my burners, but I'm using the induction plate because I think it's going to be a more even, more regulatable temperature. And you may notice that there's a little bit of lumpiness in my sugar, so I'm just getting all of that out. Now, what I'm supposed to do is to use a spatula and cook this on medium-high heat for 30 minutes. So I've set my timer. It's supposed to get kind of silky and smooth. Really have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm just going to keep doing it, and you're supposed to stir constantly. Okay, you can see that the honey has become much more liquid. It's not as viscous as it was. But just I want to see how much it's actually heating. It's a little bit low, I think. Let me try it up 10 degrees and see what happens. It's now on 140 centigrade. And I don't know whether that's good or not. But as I mentioned earlier, there are really two quite different methods. One is to boil this honey mixture to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and then incorporate the egg whites. Okay, that's too much. Let's go down. Still too much. Okay, I think that's going to be better. You can see I'm flying blind here. No idea what I'm doing. But I'm just going to keep this up for 30 minutes. And then see what comes of it. Everything is really, really liquid now. Let's see how that's doing. Now that's 60 degrees. It's actually well below the boiling point of water. But it's not frothing like it was before. It is very smooth. I'm just going to keep this up for 30 minutes. I'll come back and let you know what's going on. We're almost at 30 minutes and it's actually not bubbling quite so frothily anymore. It's now calmed down and you can see it's thicker. Still not like honey, of course, but it's doing its thing, I guess, because I really don't know what I'm doing, but the recipe says 30 minutes doing this, and then I'm going to let it cool and beat the egg whites. It's supposed to be 2 large egg whites. Well, I've got small eggs, so I'm going to put in 3 egg whites and 3 tablespoons of sugar, brought to soft peaks. So that's the next step once this is at the 30-minute mark. Now here we are at the 30-minute mark. It's actually looking rather darker than I expected, but it's kind of silky. Now I'm just going to leave it to cool a little bit and I'm going to whip the eggs. Okay, so I've beaten the egg whites with a little bit of sugar to what's called the soft peak stage, and now I'm going to add it 1/4 at a time, and you'll notice that I'm using a hand whisk. I've been doing this since I was about 9 years old. Obviously a stand mixer or a electric hand mixer would be less effort, but I'm happy to do this because I don't have any of those. Okay, next step. Now at this point I'm slightly concerned. I've incorporated the egg whites into the mixture and it's awfully brown and it's meant to be white. I mean, I understand that honey is brown and I'm just going to hope that the cooking process is going to change the color, but I'm not sure. I may have had some disaster here, but let's see. Now this time I have to cook for 45 minutes and it's supposed to come to what in sugar temperature terms, the old-fashioned ones would be soft ball. If I had a sugar thermometer it would be a lot better. Anyway, I'm going to get going on it and I'll keep you posted as the 45 minutes goes by. So I kept cooking and cooking and the mixture just got darker and darker and darker, even though the heat was on very low. And in fact my spatula melted at the end and it just was looking terrible, so I gave up and then I started again the next day. So this time, in order to avoid the problems I had yesterday, I'm going to do the first step, that is incorporating the sugar into the honey, using a water bath. As you can see here, I don't have a proper bain-marie, but this will do. And I'm going to keep the water in the bottom on a steady boil, and that means that the honey and the sugar mixture will incorporate but won't rise above 100 degrees centigrade, and therefore won't burn, I hope. And then I would revert to the pot on the induction heater when I incorporate the egg whites, and I'm hoping that things will work out better. If not, I'm probably going to give up. I've got a new set of spatulas, I bought some new honey, so now let's get going. Now here's the start of the process. The water is just starting to boil, and so the contents here of the honey and sugar mix are still pretty solid. And all I'm trying to do at this phase is just to make sure that the honey and the sugar are completely combined. The sugar is completely dissolved in the honey, and it's supposed to take on a light color. And I bought light honey just to act as a sort of semi-guarantee. But anyway, I'm going to work on this for about 30 minutes, and I'll come back and show you the results. It should be nice and smooth, silky, and not terribly brown, but we'll see. So now we're about 15 minutes in. Looks fairly good. Not going to get any lighter, I don't think. I've got the induction plate on exactly 100 centigrade. So it's just barely boiling, but I think it's good enough for what I need to do at this stage. So the next stage is going to be the problem, because you have to essentially get the mixture up to the soft crack stage, soft ball stage, which is 235 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure how that's going to work with the induction plate, but I don't want to use my gas burner, because even on the very lowest temperatures it still has a very powerful flame in the middle where things can burn. So it's gonna be tricky. Okay, at this point I'm starting to incorporate the egg whites, and I'm gonna have to use both hands, and I've got a tripod, but it doesn't look inside the saucepan, so let's do this and then I'll come back. So I incorporated the whites a quarter at a time, and now we've got this mixture. Looks certainly whiter than yesterday's, and provided I don't burn anything, it should be okay. The problem that I'm worried about is whether I can get it hot enough to reach the stage where it sets using the induction burner. I don't want to use my gas burners, because I know that things will stick on the bottom. But let's give it a try. So here we are in my larger aluminium pot on the induction burner, and now it's just a question of time and heating, because I need to get it to what looks like marmalade in a way. Like, see, when I pull the spoon out, it just incorporates. What I'm looking for is for it to get thicker and thicker, so that the bumps that are formed at the bottom there, they're going in straight away right now, but I want them to stay for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then it'll be ready. And meanwhile, I've got my nuts in the oven just warming up. I'm going to incorporate them once this has finished. Well, I ended up going with a slightly different approach because the Torrone mix was still burning on the bottom of the pan on the induction heater, even on 60 centigrade. So now what I've done is I've put a dry pan over the flame and then put the saucepan in the dry pan so that it distributes the heat more evenly, and we'll give that a go and see what happens. It is getting a little bit darker. It's supposed to be white. I don't know how people manage to get it as white as they do, but I'm gonna just try this method and see how we get on. Well, at this point I'm getting slightly demoralized. It's getting thicker, but it's brown. It's not supposed to be brown, it's supposed to be white. And all of the videos I've seen, it's white. But if it thickens, I'll make it into bars, and we'll just see what it tastes like. Boys and girls, don't try this at home. Well, it's reached the soft ball stage at this point, and you can see it's really caramelized. I don't understand at all. I'm going to add the nuts, and then we'll just see what happens when it cools down. It's a little bit more like toffee than Torrone, but something will come of it. So in with the warmed nuts, I'm just going to stir them all around, and then I'm going to put this in my prepared pan. Now here's the mixture turned out into my prepared pan, and I have to say it looks like I've reinvented nut brittle. It's absolutely nothing like Torrone. But I'm going to let it cool and let's see what happens. If it does turn out to be like nut toffee or something like that, it'll be just fine. It'll be my invention for Christmas, but it's not Torrone. Oh, my bad. But I tried over 2 days. I'm going to give up at this point. But I'll come back in a few hours and show you the finished product when it's all cooled. It'll be a while, I'm sure. Well, I ended up letting it cool overnight, and it turned out to be a kind of like a honey toffee, something like that, with nuts. Very nice. A little bit thick. If I were doing this for real, I would have made it a lot thinner. I would have used the same amount of ingredients, but a much bigger pan to cool it in, because it's a little tough to break. But quite delicious, and I guess you might think of this as the chameleon cook at work. It wasn't what I intended at all, but it is perfectly fine and shows you that even the best of us make a horrible mess of what we're trying to achieve. So don't be too upset with yourself if you do the same. Now let's move on to Australian Christmas ice cream. Now we can take a look at making a Christmas ice cream, and I can do this in several different ways. I learned how to do it from a magazine from Australia where Christmas is in the middle of summer, and so ice cream is certainly for some people more welcome than Christmas pudding boiling all day. And I do this in different ways. You can make layers of different colors, and you can see here, this is what I did last year with different flavors of ice cream. On the bottom is strawberry, in the middle is vanilla, top is pistachio, and in the top it's mixed with mincemeat. And this year I'm going to just mix vanilla and mincemeat, and I've lined a bowl that's freezer proof with some plastic, and in the bottom I've put a few pistachio nuts, and the plastic is there just to make sure that I can get it out fairly easily on Christmas Day. And now the next thing I'm going to do, I've softened up some vanilla ice cream. I'm going to mix it with mincemeat, and then I'm going to mold it here into this bowl and then put it in the freezer. And here you can see that I've turned out my vanilla ice cream into a ceramic bowl, and I'm letting it soften for maybe about half an hour at room temperature, just so that I can work it. Although once I put the mincemeat in it, it'll be easier to work because the alcohol in it will soften the ice cream a little more. It's just kind of like putting salt on an icy driveway. So let's take that step. Now you can see that the mincemeat's been added, and now I'm just going to mix it all up together. Just want to make sure that the mincemeat is evenly distributed. I don't want to make the ice cream too soft, but let's just get it all. There we go. So the ice cream melts too much. When it refreezes, it'll form crystals that are a bit too long and unpleasant to eat. There we go. Now I'm going to pack it back in my mold. That is Christmas ice cream. Now, see if I can do this so you can actually see it, although you get the general idea. Smooths down the top nicely, so that will be the bottom. Now cover. I want to keep it as airtight as possible. There we go. Into the freezer, and I think I'm going to serve this on Christmas Day with Christmas pudding, because I like hot and cold together. Probably going to make whipped cream as well, so it's probably going to be Christmas pudding, Christmas ice cream, and whipped cream. You will see that when I packed the ice cream into the bowl, it was a little bit melty, because of course I wanted it to be soft enough to combine the mincemeat, and subsequently I put it back in the freezer, and here it is unmolded. It's a little bit unclear because it's still got the plastic wrap around it, and in looking at it I'm thinking that I may just drizzle some dark chocolate over it on Christmas Day. I'm not sure. Meanwhile, if you like my video, and I don't think you're going to replicate my not Torrone, but if you like my video, please tell your friends, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on Friday for some more musings about the Christmas story.